and Development. And Val,
I'm Valerie, Vice President of Research and Development at John Paul Mitchell Systems, hair color chemist, and lover of all things hair color chemistry.
Same. So Val and I have a really unique friendship. First of all, we work together, but aside from that, we both are a lover of hair color, and we organically developed into this friendship of stopping and talking all about hair color while enjoying cups of coffee. So a lot of what you see within these episodes and future shows is just a lot of us having conversation like we normally do, but with the intent to really help grow hairdressers and be stronger and better when it comes to learning color, understanding the why, and how you can become even more successful behind the chair and understanding color formulas and even hair structure. This is where Val and I really feel passionate about helping hairdressers grow. And these episodes you'll see are going to have fundamental background of hair chemistry, and how to better formulate color to produce results to be on different textures, hair structures, and just everything in between. So we're really excited to be here with you all today. We're going to be answering all of your questions live. One thing we'll recommend is if you haven't been able to catch episode 1, check the description box below and click on that link. It will take you to episode 1. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and jump in and get some of your questions answered. Sound good, Val?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, so I'm gonna start with the first question we received from our audience. All of these questions were from you, so we're addressing all of them. How do I find out what my hair structure is?
Well, of course, there's plenty of online resources where you could Google, and I'm sure take a quiz, maybe at allure.com or something like that. But I think it really starts by having a conversation with your salon stylist, who is a licensed professional and has extensive education and training in this topic. Typically, when you're thinking about what your hair structure is, you're not like, oh, do I have a medulla and a cortex and a cuticle? You're not thinking of those technical questions. What you're probably thinking is, how much hair do I have on my head? How thick or how thin is the fiber diameter? What is the shape like? What are some of the characteristics that it has? And having the answers to those questions by talking with your stylist will really help you understand the best routine and the best types of products to use for your hair.
A fun at-home experiment would be to pluck a single hair, or maybe a few different ones from the different parts of the head.
A clip, right? A big clip.
Maybe a clip, yeah. At-home haircut. But then get some water, toss your little strand of hair in that water. If it floats, then it's healthy. And if it sinks, then you know you have some porosity. So it'd be kind of fun to actually take some of these different strands from the head to see where you maybe have some more porosity or more health to the hair. If you watched episode 1, Val referred to healthy hair. You can't wet healthy hair, and there's some truth to that. So see if your hair floats or sinks. That's a good way to do it out.
When it floats, you have a good lipid layer over the top, and it will float. If the lipid layer is gone and you put the hair in the water, the hair will absorb water into the fiber and sink. So that's a very good test. Yeah.
Cool. Next question. Should I wash my client's hair before coloring or leave it dirty?
Wow, I see this one all the time in magazines about like tips, of things to do before you go to the salon. And I think it's like kind of a big myth that you should go to the salon with dirty hair. And I'll tell you why. Typically, when people go get their hair colored and they have a bunch of oil on the hair, the thought is that will help them from being irritated or help the color uptake better. And in some sense, that's true. If you were to shampoo your scalp really deeply and then put a hair color or a lightener on top of it, your skin is a little compromised and exposed from the fresh scrub, and you can increase your propensity for irritation by doing that. So I don't want to say go to the salon with like filthy soiled hair, but don't shampoo your hair just before you go. So I wouldn't say go with oily hair, but don't make sure your scalp is super clean before you go. And that'll help with that aspect. When you have a bunch of oil on your hair, people think it helps the color uptake better. That's actually not true. Maybe Jen, you can speak from your like real life stylist perspective. But when you have this coating of oil on the hair, you're decreasing the ability of dyes to penetrate the hair fiber. And certainly if you have a liquid hair color, you can have really adverse effects as well. So again, you don't want to go with soiled hair. You don't want to go with super clean hair. You kind of want to go with like day one hair, I would say.
Agreed. As far as I get this question a lot actually from my clients, and I prefer as a stylist to have the control of doing a pre-treatment on my clients. So I have control of what shampoo I'm using and understanding what is actually living in the hair through my consultation. Oftentimes, like Val said, if there's a lot of excessive oil just from simply not shampooing their hair regularly, or maybe they use a lot of product, then oftentimes I'll do a quick clarifying, just quick gentle cleanse. If I know that there's somebody who is on a lot of medication or they have a lot of heavy metals in their water based on where they live, then I'll opt for a little bit of a deeper clarifying, such as shampoo 3. It gets in there and gets rid of some of that, the residual. And yes, it is an added step, but to me, I'd rather take that small, short added step than have a color not take correctly or have a refinement come back in where maybe I should have taken those few extra moments. Some tips to help you get the hair dry again quickly after you shampoo and do a quick pre-treatment is I always comb them out and put my client under a dryer of some sort just to help get some of that moisture out while I go mix color. So you're not standing there having to take this time to blow dry and have that done. If you have an assistant, that's a great opportunity to help your assistant learn that process while you mix color. Another thing when working with direct dyes, this is a common practice that I'd like to see stylists take more on, is getting rid of any residual product or oil from the hair so that direct dye can really live in that cuticle versus it competing for space with oil and products. So just know that there is some importance to doing pre-treatments. It really is going to be your call as the professional, but just know that there is some value in that.
Yeah, that's a really great point about the direct dyes. Direct dyes work by sticking to the hair fiber, so the hair fiber needs to be accessible. And if it's not accessible because it's blocked with oils, conditioning agents, styling products, you're not going to have a great service. So that's a great point.
Agreed. So that will help in the long run for longevity too, if you're having a challenge with that. Okay, this is something that I get all the time from my clients. Does plucking gray hair make it grow back faster?
Oh gosh, I can't wait until on our series we get to where we can do some episodes on gray hair. So just a quick note about our series, we're going to cover a couple tidbits every episode about hair science, hair color, and of course, your feedback as viewers will be really important in what we cover, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want this to benefit you, the stylist, and have a great experience with your guest. But as far as plucking out those gray hairs, I think maybe people feel like it makes the gray hair grow back faster because I think you're so focused on the gray hair. But from a physiological perspective, I haven't seen any studies that are even done on this topic, but I wouldn't think that plucking them out causes them to grow back faster. I think that's probably like an old wives' tale or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. My favorite one is if you pluck 3 more come to its funeral. That's kind of what it makes me think of.
Yeah, so. I don't think so. I was walking down the street one day and my husband, Mr. Cosmetic Chemist, said, "Oh my gosh, you have all this plastic in your hair." And I was like, "What? I do?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh no, those are gray hairs." He's like, "No, it's like plastic strings." And he was yanking them out of my head and they were gray hairs. So yeah, we'll save that for a future episode. The science of it. Yeah.
Thanks, Val. So for those of you just joining, I'm Jen and I'm with Val, Cosmetic Chemist. She and I are discussing episode 1 and answering all of your questions live. So if you do have questions and you're tuning in, please add your comments below and make sure to ask your questions live, and we have somebody that can help read those to us. Okay, this was an interesting question because it's not directly for color, but I think it plays a part for a color service and talking about hair structure. Wearing a bun, is it a problem now that I'm working from home, wearing it 24/7, or should I take it down, let the hair breathe? What are your thoughts, Val?
Well, I work in a lab, so basically my hair lives in a bun. I don't think I have any other styles. One, I'm not capable of doing them. So I'm a cosmetic chemist. I'm not a licensed cosmetologist. I can't really do my own hair, but I wear a bun every day. And I can tell you that there are some I don't want to say like really negative impacts, but there are some challenges that you will have to deal with by putting your hair up. The first is when you have your hair pulled very tightly, like you're, Jennifer Lopez circa 2013 or whatever, and you're like, you can have some hair loss on the hairline because you have all this tension between hair and scalp. Also, when you are twisting and putting your hair in a bun and using a hair tie, we have what's called mechanical damage on the hair. So it may not be obvious at first, but you'll start to get little weak points, cracks, fissures, maybe from the twisting, from the really tight wrapping. I actually, the other day, had it pointed out to me, I had a hole in my hair and I was like, what's that? And they were like, are you yanking something out of your hair? And I'm like, yeah, my ponytail holder. I just rip it right out. Not the best thing to do for your hair because it does cause weakness and breakage. And when you go to the salon and get a chemical service on top of that, you're just really increasing the propensity for an extremely damaged hair fiber because your hair is already compromised from a physical mechanical standpoint.
I see that a lot with my clients. I have a couple I can think of that I've had to help them get out of the heavy, tight rubber band hairdo, and they have busy schedules, or one's a teacher, one has multiple children that she's just trying to get her hair done for the day to get to work and kids. Yeah. So what ends up happening, what I find is when coloring, one of them is a blonde. So, we've had to have that discussion when it comes to lightening or doing anything to her hair. I can tell there's weak points in the hair, and that could eventually cause breakage from a chemical standpoint. At that point, the structure is not strong enough to allow that hair to be decolorized and with a lightener. So I have to pay close attention to how I apply, not only maybe skip that little bit of weak points with something more gentle, or use something with no ammonia. So we've gone around it, and she's actually gone out of the ponytail. So we're in good shape now. But I think it's a good question because people don't realize how mechanical damage can cause issues for the hair.
It's one of the hidden dangers of hair, and it's not something you realize until it's way too late, for sure.
Agreed. This is a great question. Prevent fadage on porous hair. How can we prevent color fadage? I know in our episode 1, we discussed porosity plays a role in sometimes accepting color very quickly. Sometimes there's that challenge of getting over deposit. But on the same hand, you get release of color and fadage fairly quickly too. What are some things that we can do to prevent fadage?
The biggest, what's the term? The biggest negative thing about losing color in the hair, the thing that causes it the most, I should say, is water. Dyes are, for the most part, water soluble in a hair color formulation, meaning that they want to be dissolved in the water. So once you get these dyes into your hair, they're living in there, and then you have water exposure, maybe from the rain, or probably more likely the shower or your bathtub or the swimming pool or the ocean, and you're getting more water exposure. And where do those dyes want to go? They want to go into the water that's being rinsed off your body down the drain. So that's how color is mostly lost. It's not necessarily from shampoo. It's actually the water that's doing the most color fade. So if you're really concerned about fadage, I would wash your hair as little as possible, to be very honest. I would also maybe start with a conditioner in the shower as well, mid shaft to ends. Only do the shampoo at your roots. But really the trick is minimizing your water exposure, minimizing the temperature, so making the water as cool as possible, and avoid getting the hair wet.
Yep. I think from when I have somebody who has really porous hair and I'm looking to deposit, I may do a treatment first to help. And I know we will discuss treatments and bonds of the hair and all of that in a future episode, but just to understand porosity and treatments a bit, just making sure to assess that. I like the Awapui Wild Ginger Carrot Triplex treatment that helps kind of build a little bit of stability in the hair, and that helps give it a little bit more of an even canvas for deposit of color. I like doing that. Oftentimes when I'm working with somebody who is on the porous side, I teach them about their tools. This is a time where we need to educate our our clients or guests on tool usage. Are they using an over-the-counter smoothing iron that has no heat dial? A good rule of thumb is where there's heat, there's escape. So if the flat iron or curling iron is on super high, it's going to fade out that color even more and add to the porosity, therefore having this endless cycle. And if you can educate them and teach them where to have their heat live and be dialed into, especially using a professional tool, hot tool, then that will be really beneficial. Pairing it with treatments, pairing it with deposit only, lessening the amount of ammonia put back into the hair so we can help keep that structure healthy and strong. So I think that combined with what Val's saying, have your clients and yourselves, if you're a consumer out there, invest in dry shampoo so you get more out of your color, your hair gets a break, your scalp gets a break. And oftentimes we get, my scalp gets so oily I have to wash, but we can train our scalp. Our scalp is an extension of our skin. If we are overwashing our face, we get oily. Same thing with our scalp. So if you can take a break, just work through it, wean yourself off the daily shampoos, use your dry shampoo, you'll see a big difference. And not only in your color, your porosity, you'll also notice a lot less oiliness at the scalp. So hopefully that helps a little bit and gives you some tips on how to prevent fadage on porous hair.
For those of you just joining us, I want to introduce ourselves again in case you missed us earlier in the show. I'm Valerie George, Vice President of Research and Development at John Paul Mitchell Systems. I'm also a hair color chemist and a lover of talking about all things color. And I recently filmed Chemist and the Colorist with Jenn Montoya Palmore.
I am in charge of professional color for sales training and development, and really just focusing on helping hairdressers and our team within our company become stronger and more proficient with hair color. My favorite thing to do is to help hairdressers make more money behind the chair by doing more color services, but really taking the fear out of hair color. Hair color is so fun. It's a lucrative business behind the chair. But if we understand the why of how to do color, how to formulate, and what we're doing to our client for the specific reason that it's needed, then you will be so much more confident when mixing your color and having those consultations. So that's the whole purpose of the Chemist and the Colorist. Val and I joined forces with just a friendship that blossomed, talking about hair color and enjoying coffee together. And now our intent is to grow our salons and our customers. So thanks, Val. I love your mug.
Yeah.
Every episode we have our coffee, you'll notice.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about filming the show, by the way, is that we get to drink coffee, which is one of my favorite hobbies. But also just to speak to what you mentioned, hair structure for me is super exciting. It's maybe not exciting for everyone. And that's what we talked about in the first episode. But really my favorite part of filming was to be able to create this dialogue with you, because I have just one perspective from the lab. I can hypothesize from a chemical or biological perspective why something worked or didn't work. But at the end of the day, it has to be usable by someone in the chair. And I think that's what you do an amazing job of, is taking, okay, here's the science, the theory, how do I get people comfortable with it so that they can make decisions, make better decisions behind the chair, increase their revenue, and increase their overall happiness with what they're doing.
It's true. And I think learning the chemistry side of it, even if that's not something you've ever necessarily been interested in, I know for me and a lot of other hairdressers, we like to nerd out on all of this information, but that might not be something that you have ever learned in your education or really thought about connecting to what our practice is and our craft every day. But in terms of learning and understanding the chemical makeup of hair as its own entity, it's a living thing. How do we manipulate it? How do we make decisions to affect it and make it healthy and keep it healthy? And also taking the emotion out of it, and also making sure our clients are happy. And there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to color. So this is really to help, like Val said, guide you and give you a little deeper insight to hair color.
And what's cool about this is it doesn't even feel like work. We're just like having fun.
No. Yes, it's so fun. I love it. We just have a couple more questions. I think really we kind of talked about the fadage. Somebody asked, does developer choice make a difference with longevity? As far as developer choice, the less you swell the structure of the hair, the less porosity and structural damage you'll incur. So it would be helpful if you're already working with previously colored hair to be mindful of using lower developers, maybe reach for a true demi-permanent, such as, you know, something that's going to really focus on deposit only. Anytime there's ammonia introduced to the hair, you are structurally swelling the hair a bit more. So that's my perspective from a hairdresser's point of view. Val, is there anything?
You know, I always cringe when people are reaching for 30 or 40 volume in the salon. I'm like, what are you doing? The manufacturer's directions say 20. Hydrogen peroxide is really ugly stuff when it comes to the hair. You know, people always say, oh, you know, this technology's been around a long time, it's old. It was discovered for hair coloring in around 1860, 1862 to lighten the hair. It was a 3-volume peroxide product, which is like nothing when you're talking like 10 and 20. But it has been around a long time. And I think we discovered the best thing to lighten hair 160 years ago for sure up front. Hydrogen peroxide is effective, incredibly effective at bleaching the melanin, especially when you have ammonia present. But I wouldn't say it's like a smart molecule. Its job is to go into the hair. It finds really electron-rich substances, melanin being one of them. And it's like, oh, I'm going to eat the melanin. And when it runs out of that, it's like, hey, I'm still hungry. Oh, here's some keratin. Get out of my way. I got to go find the melanin. So you're really damaging the hair. So the less volume that you can use and still get the job done, I would recommend that for the health of your guest's hair. Sure, you could save 5 or 10 minutes, but you're not really doing your guests any favors except damaging and compromising their hair. So for me, if I ever became a stylist, I would always use 20 volume or less. I say that until I get like someone in the hair and I'm like, oh, I need 40, but you know, just use as little as you can.
I think that the most of the time, I think the go-to is between 5 and 20. I definitely go to the lower developers when lightening, when using lightener. I like a slow roll. Also, it gives me the opportunity to double book if I like to. Another thing, when it comes to, I always get this question and it sort of leads to this where we're talking about developer. Should I shampoo the color out? Whether it's full permanent oxidative to a toner to direct dye. Mainly when it comes to the oxidative color, would I be more, I definitely always recommend, as I know Val does too, we've talked about this many times, to give a cleanse after a shampoo or after a color service to help remove any oxidative dye and get rid of the hydrogen peroxide out of the hair to make sure that you are really leaving the hair in the best condition possible, and then follow through with your conditioner and styling, etc. So just build that into your practice. It doesn't have to be a harsh cleanse, you know, just a gentle cleanse enough to get that residual dye and the hydrogen peroxide out of the hair. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Val?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly.
Okay, so we have one last question. And
we actually have a question coming in on the YouTube chat. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. There is a question?
Yeah, I think it was a really good question. I think it's interesting. Courtney is asking, do the same rules apply when applying dyes to beards? Do you ever color beards?
You know, I don't color beards. I don't have a lot of bearded males, so that's not something that I do a lot of, but I think that hair is hair. So we need to consider what our canvas is. I know that for males, my husband has a beard. I know his hair on his face is rather coarse. So I would probably address it a little differently and make sure to formulate based on what I'm trying to do. If it's covering gray, then I would probably stick with my 20 volume, maybe extend the time a bit to help give deposit to that coarse texture, and then if it is gray, that to make sure that it gives a nice deposit.
I will say from a physiological perspective, beard hair is a little different from head hair in that it the cuticle structure is a little different. There's not as much cortex to it. Same with your eyebrows. People always wonder why their eyebrow hair, when they color, it doesn't last as long as maybe hair on their head. It's because it has a bit different of a structure. So I do think you have to take a little bit different of an approach with it, but it's no different. Follow the same steps. What's the texture? What's the coarseness? and assess it from that perspective. Because in that sense, hair is hair. You have the same ingredients to tackle it. It's just what you choose based on the morphology of the fiber.
Perfect. Do we have any other questions on YouTube?
Yeah, I think this one is probably best for you. Tune D is asking, when highlighting with foils, how is it best to touch up the roots? One of my clients I foiled, I only put color on the roots, but the end result looked more like a solid color.
And when it was just foil work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As far as just touching up I usually try to repeat my pattern based on what I did X amount of weeks ago, stick with that pattern and really try to follow the same weaving pattern. And you can usually see where, if you take your section, you pull out your hair, you usually can see where you last left those foils. So I would try to mirror what you've done previously. I think sometimes when we haven't followed the same pattern, we're picking up new pieces, and therefore the end result will start looking more solid. Another thing that you can do if you're feeling like it's starting to look more solid, if you are following your own pattern, let's just start with that, then maybe it's time to add in a little dimension. So sometimes when I notice that my blondes are starting to build and build with more blonde, then I'll start adding in a low light at like a level 8, 9, and that really just adds some subtle dimension so those blonde pieces pop a bit more and it prevents it from looking solid.
Cool. I would have no idea how to answer that. I was like, I have no idea. This is why we need a chemist and a colorist. Yeah.
It's important to, if you are doing new patterns each time, it's fun to switch it up. But I've learned over my years, I've been doing hair for 23 years now, and I have 90% of my clientele I've been doing for more than 15 years. So I've learned through the years that repeating my pattern, although it feels maybe redundant, it benefits me in the long run. It's less work. I have that direction of what I did previously. So I hope that helps.
Cool. And I think we have time for one last question. How can I control warmth better?
Perfect. So I think this goes great with our episode. We talked about melanin a bit. So really focusing in a nutshell, when it comes to formulation and controlling warmth, I think two things are super important. What's the texture of the hair, and what level are you trying to achieve? And really understanding the level that you're going to and knowing what the dominant pigment is at that level. For instance, if I'm at a level 5, natural level 5, and I know I want to take my guest to a level 7, orange is going to be that dominant pigment that lives at that level. I know I want maximum control of warmth. I'm going to use the law of color to determine what tonal family I'm going to use. That's what I'll choose, and that will be a blue base. So if I'm really looking for a heavy hitting, full deposit of control with blue, I'm going to choose a double A from our double ash series, or the singular with our ash series is fine too. It's really going to be based on how heavy you want to hit it with the dye load in terms of using an A or a double A. When it comes to, if you're familiar with our color map, if not, I recommend getting on Paul Mitchell Color HQ and going to our Color XG color map, or the color map in one of the swatch charts. It is a wonderful guiding light to formulation. It works from the outside working in. You have your levels on the outside. At each level, it tells you what dominant pigment lives at that level. Level is going to be dictated by what the dominant pigment is revealed. If it's going to be more of that gold, it's going to be a true level 8. If it's orange, you know you're at a level 7. If it's red orange, it's going to be a level 6, and that's what's going to tell you. So from there, use the law of color. It works. When you use the law of color, you're replacing the missing primary. All the primaries mixed together make a neutral, and that's how you're controlling that warmth the best. So I hope that helps in a nutshell. That was like my 30-second how to control warmth.
Yeah,
but I highly recommend checking it out.
It all comes down to color theory. And if you can master color theory as a chemist, as a colorist, you're going to be really successful in hair color. I feel like that's half the battle. I actually keep our color chart at my desk because it's such a handy tool for even me to use to remind myself at a level 4, what's the dominant pigment? At a level 7, what's the dominant pigment? It's a really handy guide, and a lot of people don't even know it's there. They're so busy looking at what shades and levels we have. They're not going to the educational section of that swatch chart. and seeing that it's such an amazing tool there. The other fantastic thing is the color wheel that you mentioned, which reads out all of the levels and tones that we do offer. And it'll even have a theory, a section for color theory. So if you see that you have warmth and it's orange and you're not sure what the complementary color is, go to that tool and it'll let you know the complementary color to orange is blue. Oh, blue, that's the A or the AA series in the Demi or the Color XG, and you can apply it there. So even if you don't have 100% confidence, use that tool that Jen's talking about, the swatch chart in the little corner. Even me, I feel like I've mastered color theory and I have almost perfect color eye. I use it just to refresh myself, especially since every line is different. So
it's true.
Yeah,
yep.
I think that's all.
Color works.
Yeah, I think that's all the time we have, Jenn.
Okay, well, just a reminder to everybody to tune into our future episodes. And we're really looking to our audience to help shape the future episodes with the Chemist and the Colorist. So be sure to comment in the episode chat underneath when it comes to watching those episodes. Our next episode will be airing September 7th with our Hair and Now post show on September 8th. You'll see our social channels. Thanks for joining. Have a great day. Thanks, Val.
Bye, everyone.